If you want to avoid a C-section, then you're going to want to watch this video. Because typically what happens when you're planning a natural birth is you're told that you're going to need to dilate a certain number of centimeters per hour, especially if you're attempting a VBAC. And in this series, I'm going to go deep into everything that you need to know to avoid the C-section. But first, if you're brand new to me, then you're going to want to keep paying attention. And if you are already familiar, then you can probably skip ahead right to where I start talking about the cesarean traps. You know how this format works. So if you are brand new to me, I'm just going to let you know that this is actually a series of videos that is going to help you to avoid a C-section. I call it the Cesarean Trap series. And if you go into the Cesarean Traps playlist on my YouTube channel, then the first video in the series is the one that you're going to want to watch first. It explains what a cesarean trap is, why it's so prevalent within our medical system and our birth culture, and also a little bit of how to avoid it. Now, this particular cesarean trap episode is episode number 8, which is not dilating 1 centimeter per hour. So, understanding about the cesarean traps, we're then going to go into how to get the most out of this masterclass. And again, if you are brand new to me, then you're going to want to check out that first video inside of the series on cesarean traps, because that is going to give you a deeper overview. So what you're really going to want to check out, though, is if there's a transcript available within the description of this video. If there is, then you can also just skim, read along. There's also embedded links in there to more resources. And if you have any questions, you can always put them inside of the comments. I do read them. I do answer them. If it's urgent, your path is a little different. You want to email the team hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I also highly encourage you to sign up for the Empowered Birth newsletter. This is a newsletter that comes out every single week, and I impart my Empowered Birth wisdom to you, which is a little deeper version of the Empowered Birth method. In addition to that, though, I also incorporate another segment called Empowered Mom Magic. Because birth is really a metaphor for life, and how you come to your birth is how you're going to be experiencing the rest of your motherhood journey. Birth trauma sucks, and when you are tricked into a C-section, when you're robbed of your true natural birth experience, what this does is it ripples out into every other area of your life, and you wonder why nothing else seems to be working, or why you're not fully healing, why things are triggering you. It's all psychological, and I don't just teach typical birth education. I also give you the psychological component that is often missing in typical birth education. If you want to know more about why I do that, I would suggest you check out my book, Your Empowered Birth. But it essentially comes down to this. You've been taught what to think, not how to think about it. So the aim of these deep dive masterclasses is really to give you the overview of what each trap is, how it works, and how you get trapped into it in the first place, the psychological components and the physiological sabotage that happens in the medical system and our birth culture. And then I also help you apply the Empowered Birth method to that. And I'm also helping you to learn what to think and how to think about it. So instead of just the typical, oh, I have to dilate 1 centimeter per hour, what I'm going to show you is how this doesn't actually follow birth physiology at all, and how this then leads to a lot of moms getting an unnecessary C-section for failure to progress. So I did talk about failure to progress in Cesarean Trap number 7. So you can go back and you can watch that masterclass for more. I'm also going to be sharing additional resources with you throughout this video. So you're going to want to take some notes, and maybe if you want to go for the deeper dive, then you go and check out those resources. I've also done previous master classes on just not progressing, and you're going to want to check those out. Each one of these master classes can stand alone, And they are more powerful when you combine them with other master classes and within my signature program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, which you can learn more about if you go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/academy. Now, this is a paid program, and the reason it's a paid program is because it's very dense and also quite advanced for what moms want to do. And typically, my clients are the moms that have wanted to have a hands-off birth. The odds are stacked against them. They're told by the medical system and their birth culture that you can't do that. And they really need to be able to either get past their fear, or if not their fear, understanding the psychology of their care provider and their partner to get everybody on board. These moms also typically want a hands-off birth, sometimes even free birth. So I've geared that program towards them. While at the same time, I have this philosophy that if you're going to plan a natural birth, you need to be prepared for free birth. This doesn't mean you have a free birth. This means you're prepared for free birth, because the more that you aim for physiological hands-off birth, the more likely you are to avoid these cesarean traps that I'm going to be talking about. So now we're going to just dive right in, because as I mentioned before, if you are brand new to me and you want to know the deeper dive levels of what the cesarean trap is and how it works, and also the 3 paths to empowered birth, then the first video inside of the playlist is the one you're going to want to watch. And that is essentially what you're going to need to know about the cesarean traps moving forward. I've also scattered additional tips and tricks for avoiding cesareans inside of the other videos within the cesarean trap series, the Essential Tips for Natural Birth series, which is season 1, and season 2, which is the natural birth traps themselves. So you're going to want to check out those deep dive masterclasses. In addition to that, there are also interviews that I've done with other people, either through the Empowered Mom Hour for birth or by talking with other experts in their fields. And you can check out those interviews as well. Finally, there's also something called the Instagram Soapbox. This is when I was able to go live on Instagram, and I just talk about whatever was coming up in my head. Sometimes there's a little bit of a rant. So you can check those out as well for the scattered pieces. I call this the do-it-yourself path, because you can essentially take every single thing that I teach in my content and through my newsletter. And what this does is it allows you to piece together your own information, your own course. It does take longer, but the bonus of that is that you also don't have to pay any money. The other side of it, of course, is self-study. I don't have a self-study course currently on avoiding C-sections. I only really have Academy, and Academy has been based off of the work that I've done with moms who have had VBAC after multiple cesareans. So there's a lot of things that still apply. And then the third path, premium coaching, I don't work with everyone who comes to me. So that is why I have those 3 paths available. You can book a consultation, and I can't guarantee that you're going to get a spot because, as I mentioned, my time slots in my calendar, they get filled up very fast. I don't work with everyone. Sometimes I'll just see, oh, you have a question about this. We don't need to get on a call for that. I'm just going to send you a resource. And then if you need a call after that resource has been gone over, then we can talk about that. But I'm not going to waste your time and money. And I'm going to make sure that you get that empowered birth, because I'm committed to every mom having an empowered birth. Every birth can and should be a beautiful and empowering experience. And I also am really tired of moms getting screwed over out of their true natural birth experience, because birth is meant to be transformative. It's not meant to be traumatic. Birth is actually a portal for which your higher self emerges, your new empowered mom self. You're reborn every single time. And when we mess with that portal, when we traumatize moms, when we ourselves are also putting our trauma on other moms as birth workers, this is something I also address, then what that does is it just keeps reinforcing this culture of fear and manipulation and control. And then moms who want to have those natural birth experiences feel that they are fighting uphill battles to get it. So if you yourself are a mom who wants to avoid a C-section, you have to understand you are one of the minority here when it comes to understanding true natural birth. If you are looking for a hands-off experience, you are really outside of the box because of the culture of fear. And the more you understand the psychology of what's going on, as well as the physiology, the stronger you will become to be able to avoid that C-section that is pretty much inevitable for a lot of moms who don't know this stuff. Okay, so the cesarean trap itself, we're going to go right into what the cesarean trap is for not dilating 1 centimeter per hour. So typically what happens is that if you are having a hospital birth, but it doesn't even have to be a hospital birth, it can be a home birth with a midwife. Go and check out one of my other videos where I talked about the difference between midwives and medwives. There are quite a few of them, but the deep dive masterclass in the Essential Tips series will also go into this on how to hire the right midwife for you for a true natural birth. So you'll want to check that out. But essentially, if you are in labor and you have been established to be in active labor, what they typically suggest is that you need to dilate at least 1 centimeter per hour from active labor, which means that you would need to have started active labor and dilated to like at least 1 centimeter within 10 hours. If you had a labor from start to stop, they would want it over within 10 hours for you to dilate 1 centimeter per hour. Now, we know that that is not actually a thing. Okay, we know that that's not actually a thing. If you are in labor for longer than that in active labor, that's not a problem. It's a variation of normal. However, the medical system is also based on profit, convenience, liability, and very, very skewed data. So the trap essentially is if you don't dilate 1 centimeter per hour and they keep giving you the cervix checks and no changes seem to be happening over a course of 4 hours and then 6 hours and then 8 hours and so on and so forth, then they will say that you are failing to progress. And then depending on what else they try to do, maybe they run Pitocin, maybe they break your waters, they end up saying, baby's not coming, we need to do a C-section. Now, this can happen in a myriad of different ways. You could go into spontaneous labor, which means it starts on its own, or you could have been induced. Either way, the data that they have collected over the years saying that you have to dilate 1 centimeter per hour is flawed. And this then leads to a lot of moms saying, well, I didn't dilate 1 centimeter per hour. My body doesn't work. And therefore, that's why I had to have a C-section. This then also leads to moms thinking, well, if I had a C-section last time because I didn't dilate 1 centimeter per hour, then that means I'm less likely to dilate 1 centimeter per hour this time, and I should just schedule another C-section. And over and over and over again, this is perpetuated within our medical system and birth culture to mean that your body is broken and defective. It's not true. It's not true. So how do moms fall into this trap? Well, if all you ever hear is stories of moms who didn't dilate or they didn't dilate 1 centimeter per hour, and you continuously hear this narrative as proper labor needs to be established and you need to dilate 1 centimeter per hour once you hit active labor, then when you don't, you start to think that the problem is you, which means that the medical system, which obviously they want to fill beds and empty beds, when they suggest Pitocin or breaking your waters to speed up labor, you're more likely to agree to it because you have been told, well, I'm not dilating 1 centimeter per hour, and that's what's normal. My body isn't normal. So do you see how that in itself, the psychological component of it is getting in the way of any other evidence? You're automatically being told your body is broken and defective. You believe it because that's all you ever hear. So that's how moms fall into that trap. And then they think that it's them. And then they perpetuate that out into birth culture. And then it's also reinforced within the media. So oftentimes, if they want to have a C-section episode of a medical show, or they want to just put that in as character development or just a throwaway thing or to add some drama, they will say that the mom's not dilating enough and she has to have a C-section. You can also see this in a lot of reality TV series where they'll be like, they're not dilating 1 centimeter per hour, so labor must be stalled, baby must be stuck, pelvis must be too small, dilation's not happening, body's not working, baby needs to come out, so we're going to run Pitocin. Oh, baby's now in distress, we're going to do a C-section. So you continuously see this, moms get into this trap, and nobody's calling it out except for the doulas and pre-birthers and moms who have basically said no to the system. But we're the outliers. You have to understand we're the outliers. We are like Belle in The Village, speaking up about how we need to just teach the women to read, and everybody else is like, how dare you? How dare you threaten our way of life? So our birth culture is very medical minded. Our birth culture has grown up in this like vacuum of fear and misinformation. And this has been going on for generations. So generations of women have been told that their bodies didn't work properly, not recognizing true physiology. So I'm going to now tell you about the truth about this trap. And the truth is that you don't have to dilate 1 centimeter per hour. Your cervix is not going to stay open the whole time. If you start to feel stressed, your cervix can actually close up. In fact, I've talked about this in a lot of other videos where I shared my story, where I had been having a home birth and I was 6 centimeters dilated. And then I had a cervix check and it was horrifically painful. And after that cervix check, my cervix closed up to 3 centimeters and labor stopped. Now, if I had been in the hospital, that would have been failure to progress. But because I was at home, I could send the midwife away and say, it's a false start. So understanding that your cervix is not a crystal ball, you don't need cervix checks, and that cervix checks can actually cause your cervix to close up again. You can then also recognize that dilation in itself is not an exact science. And depending on whose fingers are checking the cervix, they can be off by as much as 1 centimeter. And then in addition to that, what if you had a check and you were 8 centimeters, but then you got tense and scared and your cervix started to close up to 6? And now the next time somebody checks you, they're like, you're not 8 centimeters, you're only 6 centimeters. You haven't been dilating 1 centimeter per hour. Well, no, your body is actually like responding to stress or to an invasive procedure that it doesn't want. Now, Ina May Gaskin talks about this inside her book, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. She talks about it as sphincter law. And sphincters don't like things going up, especially forced. Like you need to be able to open up. So the more open you are, the more likely baby's going to come out. But when you introduce those cervix checks, then suddenly you are on a graph, you're on a chart, and everybody is watching your cervical dilation. It is such a problem, especially since, and this is the other part of the truth, they are basing this off of Friedman's curve. Now, Friedman was a doctor way back in the 1950s who decided to study all of the women that were in his care and determine what the typical labor progress was. These women were all on Pitocin. They were all going through and having a medicalized birth experience. So none of these women were in a physiological birth. They were women in captivity, essentially. They were birthing in captivity with people sticking their fingers up into cervixes to see the dilation. And if they're saying 1 centimeter per hour, they were probably doing it a lot more than every 4 hours. So this study was based on just his clients. This study was based on women that had Pitocin. And therefore, the fact that the medical system still uses this particular study as their basis for their recommendation that everybody dilate 1 centimeter per hour for active labor to be progressing, it just boggles the mind. It really boggles the mind that they still do this. Okay, so you understand the truth about the trap. You understand about how you fall into the trap. Now I'm going to tell you about how to avoid that trap. So the easiest way to avoid the trap, first of all, is go to the hospital at the last possible minute or have a home birth is step number one, because the hospital is not designed to set up for physiological birth. It's just not. They need to fill beds and empty beds. They cannot have you having a physiological birth in the hospital because this could take hours. This could take days. Your body needs to be able to unfold in its own time. So if you want to avoid being told that you are failing to progress and not dilating 1 centimeter per hour, you need to feel safe to open up. And the hospital is the last place that you're going to actually feel safe to open up. They are going to want to do cervix checks, which is going to stress you out. They're going to want to do additional monitoring, which is going to stress you out. They've got bright lights, they've got rotations of different staff members, and they have different care providers. And whoever's on call is typically the one who's going to make the decisions of how to move labor along. They have a chart and they're looking at that chart and they're seeing labor's not progressing. Their only options are send you home, which is a liability to them, because what if you have the baby now out of their care? They are now liable, or speed it up. And for them, it looks better to speed it up and then save you from a problem in that labor with a C-section than it does for them to send you home. So you need to understand that the hospital is the last place you want to be having a physiological labor. You need to be home. If you live too far from a hospital to feel safe to travel in labor, then there are other options that you can check out. Now, inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth, I mentioned this briefly. Also, inside of the book bonuses, which you can get within my Empowered Birth Toolkit, you can also get a mini guide that tells you more about the different out-of-hospital birth options. So you can check that out as well. I also did a masterclass on how to pick your backup hospital, and that will help you understand which hospital to go to. Because not only do you go in last minute, you also find a hospital that's more likely to let you have hands off. Because going in pushing might not work for you. However, having somebody who is not pushing cervix checks can help you open up faster. Because the step number 2 that I would suggest to avoid this 1 centimeter per hour trap is just don't have a cervix check. How are they going to know if they don't check you? They can't. They won't know that you're dilated 1 centimeter per hour. They won't know that you weren't dilated at all until 5 minutes before you arrived. So the more that you avoid fingers in your cervix, the less data the medical system has to use against you. Look at it in the terms of law. Anything you allow can and will be used against you and push you into a C-section. The less they know, the more likely you are going to be able to achieve your true natural birth. Remember, fish can't see water that they swim in. They don't know how to support a physiological birth. If you really want to understand that, I would also suggest you check out Rachel Reed's book, which is called Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. And in addition to that, go check out some of the other video masterclasses inside of the Essential Tips series, because that is where I basically tell you all the things you need to know to plan and get your natural birth. So I go into the physiology. I go into some of the little traps that you could fall into. I go into the mistakes that moms make when making their birth plan, when hiring their care provider, when choosing their birth location. I also address things like birth advocacy and assessing risk. So this is essentially essential tips that will tell you the baseline education that you need. And then in addition to that, season 2 of the Empowered Birth series, Natural Birth Traps, goes more into why doing all of the things to try to speed up labor doesn't work, why Pitocin doesn't help, why induction is something you want to avoid unless medically necessary, and also tells you the things to consider before you agree to certain interventions. There's also a video on cervix checks itself and membrane sweeps. So you're going to want to check out those as well as this one, because that's going to give you a broader sense of what we're talking about here. So now that you understand, like, to avoid things, you basically just want to not have a cervix check. You don't have a cervix check, they don't know. You go into the hospital at the last possible minute, they don't know how long you've been in labor, and you're more likely to have a calmer experience of labor the more you stay out of the hospital. So now we're going to come into how to apply the empowered birth method to this, because I know, I get it. The idea of going into the hospital at the last possible minute when you don't have your mindset strong can be really frightening. And I understand that piece very well, because I myself also fell into that trap where I was like, well, what if I don't get to the hospital in time and I have my baby at home unassisted? That's scary to me. In order for the empowered birth method to work effectively, you need to get over that. So I'm not saying you need to have a completely hands-off free birth with nobody around. And at the same time, you need to recognize that you could. You need to be so confident that no matter what anybody says, no matter what the outside world is doing or saying or trying to get you to do, you are so confident that you're like, if push comes to shove, I'm just going to have this baby on my own. This is what stopped me from going to the hospital with my second baby, because I had to stop and start labor. I was not dilating 1 centimeter per hour. I was actually going backwards, if you really want to look at it, because of the fact that I had 24 hours of active labor, and then it just stalled out for 16 hours. And then when I went back into labor, I had no idea what my dilation was. I didn't know if I was going to have my baby the next night or if I was going to have her within 5 hours. I had no idea. And I didn't care anymore, because I had already seen what happens when you're going by the you have to dilate 1 centimeter per hour rule, which is literally what my midwife imposed on me. She said, okay, you've been going in and out of labor now, and you are a second-time mom. you are supposed to be dilating at least 1 centimeter per hour. So I could check you again and see where you're at. And then if you have not dilated 1 centimeter per hour within the 4 hours after I check you the next time, we're going to need to transfer. And then they're going to want to break your waters and run Pitocin. So I don't know if I would have had a C-section, and I know that Pitocin and breaking waters can lead to a C-section because baby's not in the right position, or labor stalls out, or just a myriad of other things. Every time you mess with physiological birth, you are messing with something that the medical system doesn't fully understand. And then all they know how to do is fix the problems that arise. So something could go wrong or nothing could go wrong, but you don't know. And when you mess with the physiological process, that is when things go wrong. Again, Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, goes into this deeper. There's a reason why the free birth community is so anti-medical system. It is because they have seen too many times that a perfectly normal birth went completely wrong because of the way that the medical system mismanaged it. And they have lost trust in that system. I look at it as a problem and a tragedy that we have lost complete trust in the medical system. I'm not saying that the medical system is all bad. I am saying that the way that our birth culture is and the way that the medical system is, they don't know how to support physiological birth. So in order for us to bring trust back to the medical system, you need to be the one that's leading this. You need to be the birth consumer. Now, I talk about this inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. I also talk about this a lot in my content. Being the birth consumer means that you're in charge. You know what your hard lines are in the sand. And so you know when it's time to intervene. So aside from just knowing that you can birth this baby on your own, you also need to have the lens of, I know when I can call in medical help. It's not, I'm going to just go it alone and I don't have any resources. I don't have any choice. If I go into the medical system, I'm sunk. That is a lot of free birthers that are on the extremist side. They are so afraid of going back into the hospital, terrified of going back into the hospital, that they would risk their lives to avoid it. And then that's when tragedies can really happen, because there may be times where you need to change your plan. So the empowered birth method, as I said, is aiming for true natural birth and pulling back only as much as needed. So in order to do that, though, you have to be clear on what your hard lines are in the sand. Maybe dilating 1 centimeter per hour or less isn't a fear of yours, unless your waters have been broken for 24 hours. In which case, you may choose to do something like what one of my clients, Dee Dee, did, where she was like, you know, my waters have been broken for a while, and I really want to go back into labor, and I want to go to the hospital, and I want to get checked out. Dee Dee still achieved her vaginal birth after 3 cesareans, even though the medical system originally was like, no, you can't even attempt a VBAC. She proved that she could. She was also taking the epidural, and she was aware of the risks and benefits of the epidural. And by doing that, by taking in that little bit of intervention, she was able to achieve her VBAC. So when moms are like, you know what, I'm not going to just have a C-section just because I'm not dilating, there are variations to that. What if you find out that your baby is transverse, and that's why you're not dilating 1 centimeter per hour? Because your baby can't come out. Now, there's options to try to do spinning babies, but sometimes that doesn't work. There's also the problem where you could have Scar tissue. Scar tissue on your cervix can also hinder you from dilating. So you need to also consider that. If you've had any procedures on your cervix, that scar tissue can be affecting whether you're going to dilate 1 centimeter per hour or whether you're going to take your own time, and whether not dilating 1 centimeter per hour is actually a problem. See, there's nuance to this. It's not a hard and fast rule. When we look at the hard and fast rule, it doesn't help. So the first thing you do, you get past your fear of having a completely unassisted birth. The second thing you do is you get past your fear of having medical assistance, and you have the education to know, okay, there are nuances to this. What are they for me? What are my unique concerns? And then the third thing is advocating for yourself. And that's where becoming the birth consumer comes in. So you've gotten past your fear, and you also know that there are times when medical assistance is needed. We're not going to say that the medical system is bad and we don't want to deal with it ever. We want our care provider to work with us. We don't want them to be the enemy. You need to know the right care provider. I have talked about this in other videos. You cannot thrive with a Category 5. Category 5 care providers are the ones that were really only in it for the money. They would give everybody a C-section if they could, because you make more money doing a C-section than natural birth. They like to be in control. They don't like to be challenged. They will come down hard on you. They will use every scare tactic in the books. They will threaten CPS. Category 5s need to get out of maternity care. But because the profession attracts them, and particularly in the OBGYN world, it attracts a lot of them. We run into this a lot. And with our birth culture of a healthy baby is all that matters, moms have been gaslit to not see the tactics of the Category 5 care provider. This is why inside your Empowered Birth Academy, I spend a lot of time in Module 4 on what you need to know about advocacy from the perspective of the medical system and in psychology, to really understand how to advocate for yourself effectively and confidently say no. I also talk about this in the Essential Tips series. So go check out the video on how to confidently say no to your care provider, because that will give you an overview. And inside of my Empowered Birth Toolkit, there's also a birth advocacy report that goes deeper into the 4 categories of care provider resistance, plus Category 5. I go deep into how to not have to worry about the Category 5s and how to beat them at their own game, because they're the ones that can charm you. They're the ones that can scare you. They're the ones that are able to put all of those doubts in your head. They're the ones that outwardly other people may think, well, they know more than you. And then depending on their level, they can be very persuasive and manipulative. That's how they usually get to the top of the hierarchy. And then they control the rest of what the maternity care system is able to do. They're usually the ones that influence the policies. They are usually the ones that get their troublesome colleagues who don't play by the rules out of maternity care. So then that influences categories 1 through 4. So now you understand about how to avoid this trap. Let's quickly recap on what we learned, okay? So first of all, how to spot the trap. It's easy. It's easy to spot that trap. It starts with the cervix check. And the more that your care providers are concerned about how fast you're dilating, or whether they say something in passing while you're attempting a VBAC and they say, well, in order to have a successful VBAC, you'll have to dilate 1 centimeter per hour. The second you hear those words, you know it's a trap. And the second you hear those words in the mom communities, when they say, well, I didn't dilate 1 centimeter per hour, so that's why I had a C-section, you're going to want to dig deeper into that story before you take it as truth. No matter how scary that outcome was, that's starting to cause that fear and tension in your body, there is something else there. Because no, not dilating 1 centimeter per hour does not mean that your body is broken and defective. It just means that your body didn't dilate 1 centimeter per hour. And it may not have needed to. So that's how you spot the trap. Why moms fall into it again is because it's perpetuated within our birth culture and our medical system. It's been going on for generations. You see it all the time in the media. You see it all the time in the mom groups. It's reinforced. It's been reinforced through family generational ties. And it has also been reinforced in the medical system. They're still going by Friedman's curve. It makes no sense that they're still going by it, and they're still going by it because their goal is fill beds, empty beds. How to avoid the trap. Go into the hospital at the last possible minute. Don't show up early. If you show up early, you're going to be more likely to get coerced into a cervix check. They want to fill beds and empty beds. They want you to progress in labor. You cannot be sitting there and just moving through your process in the hospital. It is not going to work. They're not set up for physiological birth. Stay home or labor close to the hospital, maybe get a hotel room, maybe rent an Airbnb, whatever you need to do, stay out of the hospital. Go in at the last possible minute or plan a home birth. If you plan a home birth, it's even easier because you don't call the midwife until the last possible minute if you call them at all. The next one, of course, aside from just going in at the last possible minute, don't agree to cervix checks. Because if you agree to routine cervix checks, now they can plot your progress on the chart, on the partograph. If they are plotting you on that graph, then they know that you're not dilating 1 centimeter per hour. Don't give them the data. Anything you agree to can and will be used against you. It will be used against you to give you interventions. And it's not because they're bad and wrong. It's because that is how they are trained. And then finally, you're going to want to apply that empowered birth method. You want to aim for a physiological birth, hands off, and only call in medical intervention when needed. So you need to get past your fear and be like, I could birth this baby on my own. If push came to shove, I could birth this baby on my own. And if something in my hard lines in the sand gets crossed and I need to go into the medical side, this is what I'm calling in. Understanding the risks and benefits of that thing. The more you educate yourself before you even get to the 3rd trimester, the better off you're going to be because you've got time on your side. Hiring a care provider who doesn't believe in the dilation 1 centimeter per hour but supports physiological birth is crucial. Because if they are not hands-off, they can derail your physiological birth. So that's why as the birth consumer, you're going to want to be discerning about that. You're going to want to pay attention to whether your care provider can hang with your need for autonomy, because you can't thrive with a category 5. And that's pretty much it. If you want to go deeper with this, as mentioned before, you can go and check out Rachel Reed's book, which is Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. You can also go and check out the other Essential Tips series, which again, you go into the playlist on my YouTube channel. The Natural Birth Traps is another one. If you really want to understand this at the deepest level, I do highly suggest you get your Empowered Birth Academy. This will teach you the skills to get past your fear, to get your care provider on your side, to get your partner on your side, to understand physiological birth. There's a roadmap for physiological birth in itself, which is the roadmap to true natural birth. This program also comes with extras. So what you can essentially do is you get the program, you go through it, you do the core material. If you have any questions and you're stuck, you can reach out to the team. We will help you deeper. We will give you additional resources. And then at the end, you also have access to a graduation session. We sit down with you and we go over your birth plan. We go over everything that you want to do for your natural birth. And then we find any problems, like challenges that you may have, and we address them and help you resolve that. So maybe it's like, okay, you want this and you're agreeing to this. Were you aware that this could happen? And you're like, well, no, I wasn't aware of that. It's like, okay, well, that can happen. Oh, yeah, that's actually not going to help you have your natural birth. Oh, yeah, if you want that as like a backup plan, we can put that in the backup plan, but it doesn't belong in your main plan. Oh, yeah, okay. And your care provider, they're saying this, that's a red flag. Oh, I didn't know that was a red flag. Yeah, that's gaslighting. That's a very typical thing that they say to make you think that they're agreeing to you having your natural birth, but really they're going to bait and switch you. So let's make a plan around that too. And then like essentially you have that session. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/academy. There's also a free program that's lower level than Academy if you don't want to go the advanced route. And it's called Your Empowered Birth Workshop. That just takes a name and email. So you go to the workshop, you put your name and email in, it gets delivered to your inbox. You can go through the materials. It's about 6 hours of training. And this is essentially where all of my students started out before they worked deeper with me inside the group programs and within like one-to-one coaching, because it gives you that power to be like, I can birth my baby anywhere. And I uncover a lot of secrets within that as well. See, information itself is free and it's easy to access. However, not knowing how to think about it is where a lot of moms get stuck. And you go into information overwhelm. So the aim again of these master classes is to show you there is nuance to everything. And how you think about it is what's going to actually help you achieve the success of your natural birth and avoid the C-section that you don't need to have. And if you found value in this video, then please like, share, subscribe, pass this on, pay it forward, drop this in the mom groups. If you have any questions, email the team hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And if you would like some additional resources, then go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. And that's going to give you the overview of the empowered birth method. It's going to tell you additional resources to check out. It will tell you more about those 3 paths to empowered birth. And it will also give you tips on if you're a seasoned mom or a VBAC mom or a first-time mom on having that true natural birth experience. So that's all I have for you today. Next week, we are going to talk about trap number 9, which is a labor that is more than 12 hours, because that is another side of the whole thing about dilating 1 centimeter and failure to progress, is when labor was long. And they say that that's why you had the C-section or why moms had C-sections, because this is actually so prevalent that it became part of a throwaway chapter of a book that had nothing to do with birth. Okay, and I'll tell you more about that next week. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey, whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business, a creative project, a movement, or a new version of yourself. Let Empowering Moms be your guide. Namaste.